don't remember this one.
Which one?
You fill my heart with music.
C, G.
D?
The key is written.
We may play it in.
Okay. Thank you.
I think we've played it in C.
Yeah. So G
and the C.
and C. Okay.
Yogananda Om is also on the same.
Yeah. All righty.
Lovely, thank you.
Oh.
We start?
See.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Jai Guru.
Jai Guru. Let's begin with a prayer together. Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Friend, Beloved God,
Friend, Beloved God,
Great Masters,
Great Master,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashay,
Lahiri Mahashay,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Beloved Guru,
Beloved Guru,
Paramhans Yogananda,
Paramahansa,
Saints of all religions,
Saints of all religions,
and our friend and guide Swami Kriyananda.
and our friend and guide Swami Kriyananda.
Joyfully we open our hearts to you,
Joyfully we open our hearts to
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
gathered in your name.
gathered in your name.
May we get so immersed in you
May we get so immersed in
that we forget everything else,
that we forget everything else,
remembering only our love
remembering only our love,
and living from this moment on
and living in this moment on
in that constant experience
in that constant experience
of bliss, of peace, of love. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Thought we'll do a couple of chants before we begin. This one perhaps is one that you may not have sung, I don't know. It's called Yogananda Om. I think it was developed or somebody came up with the melody for it in Ananda Assisi.
Yogananda
Paramahansa Yogananda, Yogananda Om. Paramahansa Yogananda, Paramahansa Yoga, Paramahansa Yogananda. Just feeling the presence of our Guru here with us, knowing that he is always with us. And to feel Swamiji as well through this next chant of his, just captures his spirit so beautifully, and especially what he gave to each of us through his music. This is, you fill my heart with music, I dance through life with thee, I sing your song and sorrow's gone, in joy I live ever free. G-E. Let's just enjoy the after effects of these chants for a couple of moments, allowing this vibration to spread throughout our body, throughout our heart, our brain, infusing our thoughts, our consciousness, until we feel completely filled, immersed as we began with that prayer in Divine Mother, that we may forget everything else. Shanti, peace, amen.
I love this temple. I don't know what it is, but it's really powerful. We came this morning for a 2 hours meditation led by Badri, and we just couldn't move. I mean, those 2 hours were just... And it doesn't happen always. When you sit to meditate, you just never know what's going to happen, where are you going to go or not go. And it felt like there has been a lot of, deep, sincere prayer and meditation, and longing for God. I mean, just the temple is vibrating with that. So if you don't come often for meditation here, I would say you should, because it's magnetized already.
It's meditating for you.
Yes, meditating for you, indeed. We keep forgetting that a saint has come here and has blessed this space and has blessed those who he didn't know yet. So it's the presence of a saint that is still very alive in this temple. So it's good for us to always open ourselves to those things that we don't necessarily see or perceive them often, but they are there for us to keep diving deep.
One wonderful thing about being in India is just that, their appreciation for saints and their awareness that wherever a saint has been is blessed for all eternity.
It becomes a pilgrimage spot.
So, you see that spot there? Yes. Well, a guy just stood there for a few minutes and then moved on. And now we're going to build a temple around it, and now we're going to have thousands of people coming. But that's that awareness that what they have is so powerful that no amount of time can wither it, can change it, can dilute it. But then, of course, you want to honor it and you want to build a temple around it, and you want to make, because then our devotion feeds it even more. And these pilgrimage spots, for us, we're on a pilgrimage. We're not just visiting our Ananda centers, we're visiting everywhere Swamiji was. It so happens you guys are also there. But that's the power that we're following, and that's what we're feeling is, let's go to everywhere Swamiji went, and let's have his darshan, let's have a presence, an experience with him. And that's what we had this morning, that's what we've been having since we arrived, and that's what we hope to continue to have.
And for us to get to know you personally as well, and see what Swamiji is doing through you and for you. And it's very gratifying for us to come after 6 years and see who are the ones who are still there and not giving up and just trying to make not just the most of it, but better and deeper. And that's very inspiring to witness. I mean, Swamiji said that many people think that when the leader of any organization, passes away, the organization suffers, many devotees go away, and it doesn't remain the same. The spirit somehow fades away. And I feel Ananda is extraordinary because Swamiji passed away so we could grow faster and deeper. It was, in a sense, the sacrifice that he had to make. He could have done movies. I mean, that was a deep dream of him. He wanted, especially the movie Autobiography of a Yogi, to be involved, to be part of it, but, it didn't happen. But I think he felt that our souls were ready to make the big step. And only when a parent knows that their children have become independent enough and grounded enough and ready for the adventure, then the parents allow them to do that and trust that they will be ready. And I think that's what Swamiji did. It took me a little while to recognize that, but his passing was actually a spiritual acceleration of our freedom, because he forced us to grow up spiritually. We had no choice. And it's very fulfilling to see what we have made of that time, of those now 12 years since he passed away. And some of you have children, and some of you, still here. Some of you are leading this work. I mean, it's just what a privilege to still be fully established on the path. And there is so much that we can celebrate, and we should celebrate. And I can see in a sense, I feel this is the beginning of Portland. I think what has happened so far has been to establish depth and commitment and stability that now is ready to explode and to blossom. And I want to come back next year just to see what's
I may come with
happen.
Her as well.
Yes, you should.
I realized before we began, maybe some of you don't know who we are. We're just like, and this is happening here, and that is happening, and you guys are doing a great job. My name is Shurjo. This is Narayani, and we're the center leaders currently of our work in Mumbai in India. For the last 6 years, that's where we have been. And right now we took a little period away from the work, to a certain degree also to help our deep devotees over there to start taking on a little bit more responsibility and ownership there, which they are doing beautifully. And also for us, we've been too far away from, as we said, places where Swamiji was and had been, and for us to come and really sort of draw from his presence in many ways, from his tapasya that has already been seeded, especially in the United States. But after this, in July, we go to Europe as well, and we'll spend a few months in Assisi over there. We thought perhaps we could, go in two different directions here this evening. One direction is we could have a more interactive conversation, question and answers of sort, if that pleases you. Or we'll just make our own direction and we'll just take you wherever we want you guys to go. Hopefully in the right direction. And then end with making it more interactive. So how would you feel to proceed?
Any questions? Anything that you would like to know?
Any point of reference from which we want to start this conversation?
Well, also from the introductory standpoint, perhaps you could just share a little bit about your time with Swamiji individually and collectively towards that latter period of his life and his work, especially for those that don't know.
Okay. I also thought that at some point today, Shurjo and I recently had a 2-week seclusion before we left India. He was in the mountains and I went to Assisi for 2 weeks. And both of us separately during our seclusion, we felt inspired to write. So Shurjo probably will work on a book on the Bhagavad Gita and how to make the teachings of Krishna practical in our daily lives. And I started to write another book about Swami Kriyananda, stories that I didn't share in this book because I didn't feel I was capable or I didn't understand them in the way that he meant. So I gave myself a couple of years to go deep in those stories, and I think I'm in a space right now where I can share freely, believing that I understood what he meant. Of course, I will go back to that story in 10 years from now and I will discover a completely different reality, but so far I feel I would like to share with many of you. So at some point I brought my computer, and if you would like, I can read 1 or 2 stories from this new book that I'm working on. I think you will enjoy very much. I was thinking about perhaps we can share a little bit about the last few months of Swami Kriyananda when we were in India. And Swami Kriyananda, of course, even though he didn't say it openly, but you could see Swamiji was having a shift of his energy, of his consciousness. He was already withdrawing from the senses. He wasn't that much engaged outwardly unless he had a public lecture to give, which he gave himself fully those last few months in India. He gave lectures where 2,000 people would come. I think India heard probably that this was the last time that Swamiji would be in the body, and many people attended those lectures in every city we went. I mean, people were falling at his feet. There was a real recognition that they were in front of a saint. And it wasn't so much what Swamiji said, but how people responded to his energy, to his aura. Is like they knew there was no question he was a guru for them. So you could see that Swamiji was giving a one last goodbye to India, or perhaps see you soon. We don't know what's going to happen in his next incarnation if he comes, where he would be probably in the Himalayas with Babaji, who knows. And so towards that last tour, we had our base in Pune at our property there. And just 2 or 3 weeks before we were about to leave for Italy, we received a call from a Swami that showed up in the property, and this Swami wanted to see our Swamiji, our Swami Kriyananda. And he arrived unexpected. He didn't call anybody in advance. So anyway, one of our devotees was at the property. He called Shurjo, there is this Swami that just showed up and was just this Swamiji. So Shurjo called me and I said, Shurjo, Swamiji is having his nap. I don't know, is this other Swami worth it? Should I wake him up? Anyway, but I felt, So I went to Swamiji and I was, Swami. I felt so bad. Swami. There is another Swami out there who wants to meet you. And I think Swamiji understood because he felt the energy. He woke up immediately, got dressed, and soon after he was already outside greeting this other Swami. So the interaction between the two of them, Swami Kriyananda and this other Swami, there wasn't any real deep conversation.
There was one.
I mean, there was one, yes, I was one. You want to share that? Yeah.
So obviously, not obviously, but this particular, let's call him Sadhu, so that we don't get confused in the Swamis that are involved, Swami A and Swami B. This Sadhu didn't speak any English, so, I was translating, but Swami Kriyananda asked this Sadhu, when I came in the 1950s and 60s, there were so many more saints around in India. He says, where have all these saints gone? And then he looks at the Sadhu and says, have you seen any saints recently? And the Sadhu says, yes, you. And it was just very, you knew he was there just to be with Swamiji. And he just wanted to be around him. And beyond that, the conversation was, as Narayani said, fairly superficial. Just Swamiji gave him his, just the translation of the Bhagavad Gita had just come out in Hindi. And so Swamiji gave this sadhu that book, and that sadhu said, I'm very excited to read this book. And they just maybe met for what, half an hour at most?
Yeah, at most.
Yeah, and then the sadhu said, all right, I have to go now. And he just left, and that was it. And we barely even caught his name or anything. No idea what's happening. He came with just, with two of his disciples, and they had that little thing. They offered Swami Kriyananda some, an envelope of money, a little some, like a shawl or something that's customary in India that they offer, and then they left. You want to continue?
Yeah, why don't we continue?
And it was just maybe a couple of weeks later that we left for Italy after that meeting. And in Italy, Swami Kriyananda passed away within a month or so of our arrival. Very unexpectedly, we had, of course, we were not in any way ready for this. For some of you who may know, if you remember the correspondence of Swamiji in those days, Swami was at a moment where he was starting to feel that he had pretty much done everything he needed to do. All the responsibilities, all the very sort of specific missions that his guru had given him. So he was starting to wonder, what's next for me? If there's no way for me to serve anymore, if there's no clear next step for me, I'm not sure what I'm meant to do now. And so he thought inwardly, maybe this is the time for me to retire completely into seclusion. And so we were preparing a house for him up in the Himalayas at that time, with the thought that he would go to Italy, then come to the United States for one last trip, and then retire into seclusion in this house in the mountains. And so that had been sort of the plan that all of us were gearing for. And then suddenly he decides, it's like, there's nothing for me to do for my guru. I'm not going to just go live somewhere for myself. So time to leave.
It was very interesting for me to witness how it's not like Swamiji was struggling, but for him was like, there is no sense for me to stay in the body if I cannot serve my guru proactively. And you could see that he was having not an inner conflict, but seriously pondering what my next spiritual step is going to be, because I'm here to serve my guru, to expand his mission. And if I cannot do that, what's the point? So you could see that at a very, very high level, he was having these inner conversations with Master that, where are you taking me? Do I need to tune into a different way of serving you? Because I have not serving you in other way than, fulfilling and expanding and manifesting some of your ideas. But now, where do you want me to go? What expression my service and my seva is going to take? And you could see it. It was a real thing for Swamiji. I mean, like, I have never taken so seriously and asked Master so intensely, how do you want me to serve you? And for Swamiji, and after an entire lifetime of just doing that, still he could have the thought that, is there anything else, anything better I can serve you with? And it was very moving to see Swamiji towards the end still, what else, in which other capacity. He never stopped asking Master, how can I serve you more? How can I love you more? How can I worship you more? And to witness that until the very end was very touching, because that was the only real thing that mattered to Swamiji, to serve his Guru. Anyway, I can continue.
Where are we? Oh.
The Swami.
So we come back, our Swamiji leaves his body, and we naturally think we'll go back to Pune, where we had been serving up till that point. And so when we go back, just a month or so after we get back to Pune, we receive a call from a lady who we hadn't heard, and she's like, hello, I don't think you may remember me, but I had come with this other sadhu to see Swami Kriyananda. I was like, oh yeah, wonderful, how can we help you? And she says, well, I just wanted to tell you that this sadhu wanted me to just reach out to you both to see how you're doing, because a month ago this sadhu had called me. Now this sadhu lives primarily in the jungles, in the forests, and he comes out for just a month out of the year. He left his home at the age of 9 and never went back, and lived entirely in the forests for that period. And so he called this disciple of his, and he told this disciple, I think Swami Kriyananda just left his body. This was a month ago. And he says, go check on the internet. And so she goes and searches, and she doesn't find anything because it had just happened. And then the next day when she searches, she finds a little article that said Swami Kriyananda has passed away. And it was exactly the same time this sadhu had called her. And so she tells us that this sadhu previously as well had called her and said, we need to go see Swami Kriyananda now because I think he's going to leave his body. And I want to have one final darshan from him. And so he just came out, found, this disciple meets him in Mumbai. They drive down, 5 hours just for that half an hour, little meeting. And then he just goes back, and that was it. That was his entire, intention. But then she says, at some point that whenever you guys feel ready, this sadhu would like to invite you over to his ashram. He had a very tiny little ashram outside the city of Hyderabad, if you are familiar with that. And, we weren't quite sure.
I don't know.
I don't know what this is about. But, of course, we were both curious and a little moved by the fact that he had such a deep connection with Swamiji that it was just hard for us to comprehend. They had never met before. They had no outer relationship that he could sort of draw on. And so a few months later, we go and visit this sadhu. He'd just come out from his long seclusion, as he did every year. And he told us some just absolutely fascinating things about Swamiji. that none of us ever knew, and nothing that Swamiji ever mentioned himself as well. Now, these were his thoughts on what he felt of Swami Kriyananda, and they were very, sometimes for us, we think, oh, how wonderful Swamiji is, because we're his students, we've been following, we've dedicated our life to this path. It's easy for us to sort of have our own version of Swami Kriyananda. It was wonderful to hear it from somebody so completely out of our context and so completely uninvolved in anything that we're doing, and at the same time so certainly a high soul. And so he said to us, he said, I read Swami Kriyananda's Gita, and I am convinced that Swamiji was Ved Vyas in his previous incarnation. He says, because nobody could write a Gita like this if he wasn't. And then he said, in fact, I know another past life of Swamiji's, and he says, in that life, Swami was Thomas à Kempis, and he wrote The Imitation of Christ. Now, whether it's true or it's not, what exactly may be the reality of the situation, what was wonderful for us to see is here you've got this deep, spiritually dedicated, wandering sadhu, so connected with Swami Kriyananda in spirit, knowing exactly when he's leaving the body, feeling this deep need to be in his presence just once before. We don't know what incarnations they may have lived together. And so convinced of where Swamiji's coming from, because we don't think of these things as much, do we? We sort of know Swamiji as we know him, and in the form that we know him. We don't think of what greatness, what spiritual wealth he's carrying with him, because, of course, Swamiji never talked much about these things, but it was just very fascinating for us to hear from somebody else.
I mean, one thing is for other people to recognize Swamiji as a saint, but when a saint recognizes Swamiji as another saint, it says a lot. And you could see in India towards the end, those people who were very, very highly advanced, they really wanted to be in Swamiji's presence. Not to really ask anything, but just recognizing that they were drawing by being in his very presence. So this Swami also was a very interesting when he was talking about Swamiji. We cannot speak too much about him because he has asked us, just because he lives such a secluded life. He lives in the jungle. He doesn't have a big following, and he wants to keep it that way. He doesn't want to be public. He doesn't want for us to say his name and not to share too many stories, but we know that there are settings that when we share information is well understood and with respect and with reverence. So, but he always says, just don't quote me, don't say these things, don't say I said that. But one of the things that he said that was very, very moving for us, I don't know if you want to share about the layers of disciples and how they approach them, what he said about Swamiji.
Yeah, it was very, in his ashram's a very traditional ashram in the way that you might perhaps conceive of if you've read the older scriptures of India. Extremely simple, he sits under a tree and does his satsangs, and there's just very absolute basic amenities there, but also in the dynamics of the ashram you start to see that there are certain categories of people, to put it crudely, and you see that there are one or two people who can be very close to the sadhu, can be very physically close to him, hand him things, bring his food. But that's maybe, I don't think, more than 3 people or 4 people who could do that. Then there were another group of a larger group of people who, if they came in his presence, they sort of maintained a few feet of distance and they wouldn't sort of step into that space. And so even if they came, they'd sit, right there, do their pranams from there, and either remain seated or walk away. And then there's another set of people who couldn't even enter a room he was in. And so if they wanted to kind of greet him, they'd just come to the door, greet him from there, and step away or sit outside. And so, a day or two of this passed, and we were watching these dynamics, and we were just thinking in our minds, this is strange, all these layers and rules, and who can do what and who can't do what. And of course he picks up on our thought and he says, you may have noticed that there are, such dynamics going on in the ashram. We say, yeah, in fact, Swamiji, we were wondering about this. And he says, well, it is such that there are only a few people who I feel their karma is refined enough that when they come into my aura, I don't suffer from the experiences that they are carrying with them. And he says, otherwise, because I am such an open reality, anybody who steps into my aura, I automatically take on all their thoughts, all their past experiences, all their realities. And he says, and I physically suffer if what they are carrying, doesn't vibrate or match with the upliftment that I need to be. And then he said, Riley, that is why I stay in the jungles most of the time. Because he says, that's what those of us who are sensitive enough, that's what we keep experiencing from the world, is all of that. And so he says, therefore, I have to be very mindful and careful of my energy. And then he says, and that is why what you don't realize is how great Swami Kriyananda was. He says, because he let all of you be around him all the time, and you do not know how much he suffered. And, just again, a different perspective that none of us would otherwise take, because for us it was just such a natural thing. Oh yeah, here he is, all right, let's go sit with him, let's approach him whenever we feel like. But in that ashram, nobody could just approach the sadhu. Nobody could just decide where they're going to sit or what they're going to do or how close they're going to be. It was very clearly set. And it was amazing to have that perspective again, because these are things we don't really tune into. If we do, sometimes we also realize, we know environment is stronger than willpower. When we go to certain places, we know how the vibrations of that place affects us. Geeta was just talking about traveling in New York City and all these extremely restless places and how she could feel that restlessness. But that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of imagine feeling everybody's thoughts all the time. Imagine feeling all their experiences all the time. Imagine feeling all the karmic seeds they're carrying with them all the time. I mean, just the sheer weight and madness of that, what it might do. And that's what that sadhu was saying. That's what I experience when I'm with people, and therefore I have to stay far away from them. And that is what Swamiji was experiencing all the time with all of you. Just like, wow.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening, even though some of us knew Swamiji's greatness, but when you hear it from someone of that high caliber, you just appreciate so much more, not what we had with Swamiji, but what we still have in terms of accessibility to him. Because even wherever he is right now, he's just allowing all of us to pray to him, to ask him, to demand, to bring him right there in the middle of our, frustrations and moments of confusion. So it's just something that we should be so grateful for, a friend that no matter at which plane he is always available and allow us just to go there wherever he is. This sadhu, he has many pictures in his ashram of Master, Babaji, Lahir Mahashaya. he recognizes that our lineage has a role to play for the upliftment of mankind. He has told us many times that, guys, whatever you are doing, meaning Ananda, whatever Ananda is doing is coming directly from Babaji. He said, nowadays there are many other organizations, many other gurus who are using the name of Babaji. He said, but there are very few who are really following Babaji's marching orders. Ananda is one of those rays, and he always said, keep doing what you are doing, because Kriya Yoga is going to be he said the Kriya Yoga of Lahiri Mahashaya is going to be the religion
of the future.
And we don't see this sadhu often. He has called us once or twice whenever he feels, and we don't see him for 2 or 3 years. Then suddenly we receive a call from his close disciple and say, this Swami is calling you. And whenever we go to his ashram, who has been 3 times in 13 years, only 3 times, he only asks of us, just sleep, eat, and meditate. Do nothing else. And we are there no more than 3 days. That's more or less the time that we are allowed to be in the ashram. I don't know what he does, or at the level that he adjusts things within us, but every time we leave, we feel we have been touched by Swamiji, which is not through what he says, because he speaks Hindi, and since the last 4 years he has been in complete silence. He doesn't speak. He's in complete silence. So when we were there last time, he said, if you have any questions, so we will ask something, and he will show to his disciple, and she would translate for us. So he's in a stage where he's not speaking. But that's the only thing that keeps saying to us, just keep doing what you are doing. Babaji is blessing this work, and he's behind this. And what you are doing is going to be the future. It's the answer of what people are going to need in the future. And another very interesting thing that we asked about, have you learned, or we shouldn't say that.
Yeah, what did we, I don't know what we should say and shouldn't say. We've already said too much.
Okay, the last thing.
We were asking him, Swamiji, have you what's your role here? Have you just transcended this reality completely? Are you still learning stuff? I mean, we're just trying to gauge what's your consciousness, where are you at? Not that we could figure that out anyway. And so he says, oh, no, I have lots to learn. Right now, Lahiri Mahashaya is teaching me how the causal world works. Okay, that's good to know. And, so he has a very deep relationship with our lineage, but on a very different track, as we can see. Just, I'm working with Lahiri Mahashaya on the causal level right now. But, I still have a sort of physical work to do here as well. And then jokingly, he'd say to us, Kriya Yoga is not just the airplane route. It is the business class of the airplane route. So you just got these, what we're trying to say is, what's really sweet for us is, the first time when we met him and we said to him, we were a little just,
cautious.
Yeah, we were considered we don't know what's happening. Is he somehow expecting that we'll join him? We're just trying to gauge into what was trying to happen, because it was very strange, very unusual for us suddenly to be drawn into the orbit of another, spiritual teacher. And so, without wanting to sound that we're like a little, we just said, why have you, what's going on here? Why are we here, essentially? And he just said, oh, Swami Kriyananda just told me to check in on you. So I'm just checking in on you. We're like, all right.
He said something very sweet, something like, when the children of when a saint passes away, he gives the responsibility to other saint to check on them and make sure that they are doing all right, spiritually speaking. So we don't know really what's going on. It's not that we see him often, but every time we have seen him, it's very clear he always refers back to Swamiji and our lineage, and it's pretty clear who we are, that we are disciples of Master, and there is nothing strange there, but the fact that he has a relationship with Swamiji, and in the same way that Swamiji is using other vehicles to guide us, this is something very unusual and very precious for us. Would you like to hear? Yes?
Well, there was a question, and I thought it was a fun one. I think people know that, Narayani, that you were caretaking for Swamiji in the latter part of his life. And the question was a curiosity about Shurjo's story coming in and
where did you come?
What are you doing here?
So it's a fun story.
Yes.
So, how your association with Swamiji began?
Well, it began primarily because Narayani and I got married. If you've read the book in any way, there's that story is well documented in there, but essentially both Narayani and I were, I was a monk and Narayani was a nun, so in our early days with Ananda, and we met on this piece of property just outside Pune where we were hoping to sort of have a community. And we had just purchased that piece of property when I joined Ananda. This was 2009. And so it was just a barren land. And the first thing, Surendra was there with us. In fact, when the sadhu had come, did you meet him?
No.
But did you hear you were there at that time, I think. Yeah. So at that time we were building a house for Swamiji, starting that energy there on the land. And just as the house was almost fully complete, Swamiji was adamant he wanted to move in immediately. And
as usual.
Yeah, he's just, I'm not going to be, I don't want to sit in the city. I want to be in my house on the property where we are starting this work. And so nothing else was really ready. So there was nothing else except his house and a few tiny little other kind of what we call kutirs, these one-bedroom little studio things. And so Swami moved there with Dharmadas and Nirmala, who some of you may know. They're now the spiritual directors in Sacramento. And Narayani, Biraj from Palo Alto, if you know him, and there was just us living on the land, because I was at that time the only Indian helping out with the project there, and so I was the only person who could speak the language. Yes. A great accomplishment on my part. And so, I was the sort of maintenance fellow of the property, and I would constantly, and since Swami's house was not nearly done, there were so many issues all the time. AC isn't working, the lights are out, the drains all clogged up, we don't have water. So I was always the guy sort of running around, and Narayani at that time was just starting to become the full-time caretaker for Swamiji, and so we ended up having to interact a lot. And wonderful friendship developed from there, and over the years that friendship eventually got to the point where we had a feeling that perhaps there's something more that's trying to happen, but it was a difficult thing, it was a hard thing. We had both chosen these very clear paths for us of dedicating our lives to God in that particular way. And especially for Narayani, since she was serving Swamiji, that added an entire other layer of, both complication, but also why she needed to be extremely strong. And so we were not quite sure whether this is something that
was going to work out. Or
it was just a karma. Is it just a physical desire on an external level that is trying to find its way out, or we're trying to really tune into what this might mean. And finally, after trying to figure it out in our own hearts, realizing that it's not happening. Narayani decided to ask Swamiji. I'm supposed to tell what happened. Okay, I wasn't there. This is what Narayani told me happened. And so Narayani and Swami were here at the village at that time, and because they were about to return to India within a few weeks. And so it was like, we better figure this out before we sort of see each other again, because then, it's the same sort of inner struggle continues. And so she finally decided she's going to ask Swamiji. And when she did, it was at night, she was putting Swami to bed. And so she sort of gathered all the courage, I imagine, and said, Swami, this is what's happening. This is what's going on right now inside us. And could you, I've tried to sort of tune into it on my own. But of course, now that I have some clarity on the feeling, I'd like to now ask you what you think about it. And if you feel this is something worth putting energy into exploring, then only then will I even consider it. And so Swamiji said to her, let me meditate on it.
And I was like, oh my God.
Would have been better if he just gave me an answer right then.
Like he has to meditate on it. So that night, none of us slept. I didn't, for sure. And Swamiji came to my room at 5 a.m., which made me realize he really didn't sleep. He was trying to meditate, to tune into me. It was a step that couldn't be taken just, lightly. He knew that whatever he would say would have an impact in my destiny. So it wasn't a joke. And for him, every advice he gave to all of us, he knew we would take it to heart. And anyway, so at 5 a.m., he came to my room and he said, I have meditated on it, and I think it's the right thing for you. You guys should just go ahead. I think it will be a good thing for the work, and he will be able to protect you, which I don't know yet what he meant with that. Until this day, I can't figure out what he meant with that. But what he said about it will help the work certainly has been for sure a reality, especially in India, where his help has been so crucial for the development of at least now in Mumbai. Anyway, so then when that happened, I wrote to him. Swami said yes. And that was it.
And then the next day, Swami says to Narayani, now in our minds, we said, all right, now we'll get to spend time with one another, we'll get to know each other, because in all these are 3 years have passed, through this process. Because Swami was in India only for 6 months at a time. And so we'd see each other for 6 months and then we'd not see each other. And even when we were together for 6 months, we barely ever actually interacted, except on this level of what needs to be done for Swamiji, because I lived in the monastery and Narayani, of course, was with Swami all the time. So our interactions were actually very minimal. And the truth is we didn't know each other, at least not on this physical plane of awareness. And so our thought naturally was, okay, now we'll get to know one another and we'll see if this works out. But then the next day, Swamiji comes to Narayani and says, so when are you getting married?
And I was like, I have only said Swamiji no twice. This was one of them. I said, Swamiji, I'm not going to marry him yet. This is too soon. I don't know him. Oh, you have to. I said, Swamiji, no, I can't. I mean, just give me a year.
This is how I cornered her.
Like, give me a year, let's go to India, let's get to know this guy, and let's see if it's going to work out. I mean, I wasn't ready to just go all the way. I mean, and that's what who Swamiji was. If you're about to give, to step away of this vow of giving your life to God, you have to transfer all that intensity, all that desire, all that commitment into another higher commitment. And you cannot just test the water. You have to put all this into this new direction. So he was raising the bar very, very high. Of course, we didn't know then he had very little time left. So everything that happened in the last 7 years of his life 7 months of his life was just an acceleration of our karma. Just everything happened so fast, and big decisions that our destiny, was at stake. He just he accelerated also. Anyway, we landed in India.
I had to tell my parents first, I'm leaving the monastery. Oh, okay. Now I'm getting married.
Yeah, actually. So we left the village. This happens one day, 3 weeks later, we were married. We landed in India 3 weeks later, and a day or two after we landed. It's one of the first things I did. I got married with someone who barely knew.
We wrote Drupada and we said, Drupada, we need a wedding date and a time between this day and this. We gave him 3 days. Within this day, find us the best time. He says, well, I wish you gave me a much larger window. It's no, this is all you have.
But it was so, now looking back, that was Swamiji's life. Even the big things didn't affect your awareness. Everything is happening right now, and it's not going to affect your way of serving, your way of perceiving yourself. It shouldn't. So why create and give so much energy to something that it shouldn't? So anyway, everything happens so fast.
Yeah, Swamiji usually took a midday nap, and so Narayani put him down for his nap. She did a half an hour wedding ceremony for us. We came back in time for him to wake up, and life continued on.
As if nothing happened, just welcome.
And from that moment on, I was in the room with, I was just, now Swamiji, I'm also going to impose myself on you, not just on Narayani, but also on you. And so from that sort of period on, I got drawn into Swamiji's life. But as Narayani said, that only lasted 7 months.
I have to tell a funny story around that. I was in Gurgaon working primarily with Dhyana, and Swami was beginning a multi-city tour with a big program in Delhi, and he had an entourage, and a number of us were invited to stay in the hotel that he was staying in. And I had the list of all the room assignments. And I looked at it, and I went to Dion, and I said, there's been a big mistake. Shurjo and Narayani are in the same room. This has been a big secret. And she said, oh, no, I didn't explain the situation.
Wow, yeah. Narayani was in Seattle, I think, when that shift happened.
We recently were in Seattle, and Padma, Riman, and myself, the 4 of us, we were remembering how this situation happened, because I was with Swamiji. We had a public event. I was wearing my brahmacharini yellow clothes. The next day, I showed up wearing white, and I could see everyone. What happened here just overnight? But yeah, everything was just happening very fast, and you had to catch up your own karmic wave. You know, you put something into motion and you had to raise to the occasion. There was no time to analyze, to digest, to the moment you were open to just move forward, to break through something, you just had to match that way of energy. And Swamiji just was very, very...
He didn't make a fuss of anything.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back from your wedding. Okay, let's have lunch. You know, wasn't like, oh, wonderful, how was it? And what was, you know, how do you guys feel about this? No, just
He
continue on.
He didn't allow us to dwell and nor shift our awareness from giving our life solely to God. It shouldn't change when you bring another person into your life, whether it's your husband, whether it's your children that keep joining the family. You know, your single-pointedly devotion, dedication should always be a priority. And I think that's why he didn't allow for this union to be any other than just, you know, adding magnetism to our own personal, individual dedication. And that's something that we need to keep reminding ourselves, you know, like it's a wonderful dance always.
I think he also foresaw your current position, you know, the team that you would become, and how complementary you are with each other, and the power that you have as a couple. I love your book, and I love the portion where, you know, how Swami would work with everybody in a unique way, and hearing you speak your English so wonderful.
Oh my God.
The parts of the book where you're recounting how he prodded you and he encouraged you in a strong way to continue improving your English, and how he worked with you individually. So if you could comment maybe a little on that.
I mean, I would feel terrible every time that Swamiji gave me extra energy just to teach me English.
Perfect.
Of course, he knew was going to be helpful, but I will always think to myself, Swamiji has so many more priorities and responsibilities than just teach me English. I mean, I would really feel terrible, like he was wasting his time. But for Swamiji, no one of us was a waste of his time. Every time he invested in us, he was investing in the work. He was investing in his own discipleship, and it has taken me years to recognize how much he has given to each one of us, not just with words, maybe with an email that he sent to us, the way in which he looked at us, the way in which he smiled at us, the way in which he remembered our names, the ways in which he asked to serve in a particular way. I mean, he saw us as a vehicle for expanding Master's mission, and that's what we are, what we represent, each one of us that said yes to him. You know, we are his legacy. So yes, he did wanted for me to learn English, and all the credit is his, because I can also now, there are a few words that come to me when he taught me, and every time now that I go to Ananda village, to his apartment, I can remember most of it, the words that he taught me in that particular corner, or in that particular kitchen, or when we were in his living room, you know what he, no, remember this, boost. Boost means when your ego, and he just explained me what the word boost means. And yes, it's extraordinary how much perhaps he saw that we would be doing something more than we ever thought we would be doing. I mean, until this day, I'm surprised that we are doing what we are doing, but it's because of him. Everything that we have done, especially in Ananda Mumbai, we see it has the trademark of his energy. There are projects that Shurjo and I have felt this is a Swami project because of the speed of the project. We recognize that it has the Swamiji speed. It's a particular things. The cafe, especially Ananda Cafe, has been a project that we had to catch up with the energy of the project. Many projects, you think about them and you generate an energy and you are along with that energy.
You're trying to drag the project
or
along
you are
with
trying to drag that energy. But the cafe was an energy that it had its own energy and we were just catching up. I mean, and that's how we are recently relating with Swamiji, the quality of the projects that he asks us to do. Yeah.
And talking about Swami working with people and how he worked with them, he never told them directly, as you're saying with Narayani. It's not like, you're going to need English because at some point you're going to do this, so I'm going to now help you get there. It was just very natural. Oh, why didn't I help you with your English? And I was just remembering recently when I came to the path, even in general, I was naturally much more intellectually driven. I didn't have many heart qualities. I'm still struggling in that department, but I think I'm doing all better. But devotion wasn't a natural state for me. I was raised an atheist, and so therefore I never had a relationship with God. And so when I came to God, it was through the reading of scriptures, through books, through trying to really understand Him from that perspective. The logic of it all made perfect sense to me, and that's what I connected with more. And so now here I am. I'm in Swami's life more so. And one morning Swami says, Swami at that time had been working on a script for a movie called The Answer, which I hope some of you have seen, or all of you have seen. And when he was writing the script, it was actually going to be a different movie. It turned out to be the movie it is now, primarily because Swamiji left the body. But originally it was going to be a movie in which Swami himself would also be, and there was going to be a seeker, which was going to be played by Elizabeth Rom, the lady who was in Finding Happiness. So Finding Happiness had finished. Swamiji really enjoyed the actress in the movie, and he felt that she could very well sort of be in the next film for The Answer. And the script, the way he wrote it, was that there's this woman and she's a seeker and she's really seeking the next steps in her life, and reads the autobiography of a yogi and finds Swami Kriyananda and comes to meet him, and she asks Swamiji about his life, and then the movie was going to be a flashback, and then Swami's life would be revealed, and so it'd go back and forth. It'd be a conversation between her and him, and then it would go back, and all the scenes with his time with Master would play out. So that was the way he wrote the script. Then recently he heard that Elizabeth Rom, suddenly after Finding Happiness, her career really took off, and she suddenly got a lot more movie offers, and now she was no longer free. And so she wrote Swamiji, said, unfortunately, Swami, I can't come to India and do this project with you because I'm currently shooting for another project. And so this morning, Swami, over breakfast, Swami says, well, Elizabeth can't come, so I was thinking, Shurjo, maybe you will play the role of this seeker. And I was just like, what? When did this happen? And he's like, well, I spent all night, I've tweaked, I've moved. It's no longer a woman, now it's a young man, and his name is going to be Gopala, and you're going to be that person. And so there I was, and I was like, well, okay, Swami, I'm happy to give it a try. But then Swamiji looks at me and says, but this character that I've written, he's a very devotional guy. I'm like, can you be devotional? He asks me. I says, I can give it a try. Well, there's this one scene, he says, in which you have to clutch onto the autobiography of a yogi and cry, just out of so much love. Can you do that? He asks me. And I say, well, Swamiji, I'll try. And so, we shoot all of that. We hire an entire film crew, we do everything, we're in Calcutta, we're shooting all these scenes. There I am, clutching onto the autobiography, crying. I mean, the whole thing, the whole gamut. And then none of it actually ever makes it into the movie. And, you know, you think that Swamiji would know all this, already understands this, and it doesn't matter. I mean, imagine the amount of time and money and energy we wasted shooting all of this. And sometimes I just feel, you know, that he just did it so that I'd just be more devotional. I mean, I'll create this whole script and we'll hire a whole crew, we'll do this whole thing just so you can clutch the autobiography of a yogi and cry. Just so you can figure out what it means to even pretend to be devotional. I mean, you just gotta wonder at times on what level, you know, they function, how they see the world, and what an individual devotee's spiritual progress means to them, for them to just follow whatever the energy is required in order to make that happen. And well, I have to admit that I did change after that. And I have to keep looking back and coming back to that moment. Every time my mind veers off to the intellectual again, I have to remember that moment and remember what Swamiji did and what he created just for the one of us. And he's still creating all these ludicrous situations for all of us, just so we learn this one tiny little thing here, learn this one tiny little thing there. And you just wonder, you know, how is he doing? How is he creating all these crazy situations? Because who would think, let's hire a whole crew and, you know, film these scenes? Another fun, I don't know, can I tell another fun scene from? Okay. So we're filming this thing, it's in an auditorium, and this is where Gopala, for the first time, sees Swami Kriyananda. And it was going to be while Swamiji was giving a public lecture. So that's the scene that this boy goes, finds out that a direct disciple of Yogananda is giving a lecture. He comes to that lecture, and that is where he then clutches onto the autobiography and cries, and then tries to find Swami Kriyananda, and eventually tracks him down to a hotel room, and that's where he has this conversation with him. So in that scene, now Swami was anyway giving a public lecture, so we decided let's just use this situation. You know, we didn't have to hire all these extras in an auditorium since Swami was going to give a lecture anyway. But because that was happening, we had to kind of film sort of under the radar. Because if you're otherwise filming for a movie, you need permissions, you need licenses, you know, you have to do a whole sort of extra setup. But our thought was, Swami's giving this talk anyway, we'll just get the crew, we'll just tell them that we're filming the talk, and we'll sort of take the scenes as well in the process. But that meant that there could be no retakes. So that we had to just shoot it through and through. We couldn't say, cut, all right, everybody go back to your places, we're going to take this from the talk. So given that, we told Swamiji, all right, Swamiji, there's this one scene, and it's a very important scene in which after the lecture, you and Narayani are going to your car so that you're going to go to the hotel. Gopala is going to come running and he's going to say, Swami! But you need to pretend that you didn't hear him and you're going to, you know, this was the little tension in the movie that the seeker tries to get to Swami Kriyananda, isn't able to, and then finds other ways to find him. And so we say, you know, so Swamiji, Shurjo is going to call out your name. You need to pretend that you haven't heard him and keep going. All right. So we told him several times, Swami, there are no retakes here. All right. So we're doing this. All right. Got it done. So lecture ends. Narayani and Swami are walking to their car. Gopala comes running, Swami! And Swami says to Narayani, oh, Shurjo needs something. And he starts walking towards me.
I was keeping on the camera recording that. And Swami, no, ignore him.
But what's the sweetest thing is just no matter how much you've told him, the moment he heard someone's calling out to me, that's it. I need to help this person. Who's calling for me? Who needs me? Let me go there. It's just, again, it's just amazing. Our minds would just say, nope, I need to just pretend. I haven't heard you. No, la la la, la la. I'm just moving on. But for Swami, it's like, my name was called. I felt that call. Let's find out who it is. And it's just so natural for him to just want to go towards wherever somebody needs him. Not even for a moment did he think, we're filming, we're doing this, we can't take more retakes. His mind didn't function on that level. And it was just so sweet to experience.
When Swamiji, he said that the only reason he really incarnated right now is because he only had 2 desires. And he kept saying that over and over again, and with ayahs again he's saying the same. But those were the 2 primary motives why he came: to find God and to help others to find Him. And that's it. Everything he did, every decision he took, every thought he had was around those 2 things. Is this going to help me to help him? Is this going to take people to God? Is this going to bring me closer to God? Everything he did was around that thought pattern. It takes many, many, many lifetimes to have just 2 desires. And those 2 desires being that. It said it all. I would like to end perhaps with one story of my book, maybe the new book. I have the computer there. Are you interested to hear a story?
Yes.
Which one should I share? The one of the book cover or the wedding?
Wedding is what?
The wedding gift?
No, we already did the wedding, so you don't have to do the other.
Okay, so the book is right now in a very raw state, which I'm only writing the story in itself and what I learned from that moment. But of course, I need to build up a little bit to what happened and takes you, to that particular point. So let me see, maybe this one. Okay. So this is the time when Swamiji was working on his book, A Pilgrimage to Guadalupe. Do you know that book, A Pilgrimage to Guadalupe? So he wanted, for that book he finished, and he wanted a particular book cover. And I don't know if you know, there was this artist that he met in Sorrento. His name was Raffaele Concilio, an artist that Swamiji felt he wanted to support. So he thought that why not asking this artist to do a painting of the Virgin of Guadalupe for the book cover, but the Virgin had to have a particular hand position, a particular expression. Swamiji didn't want for the Divine Mother to be like this, to be looking down, to be inviting her children like that. He wanted the Divine Mother to have this particular position, like inviting her children to come to her. So Swamiji had that vision, wrote to Raffaele Concilio, I want for you to do a painting of the Divine Mother in this way. But Swamiji wanted a real person. And we were in India, and he asked me, why don't we find an Indian lady, because they had to have a darker skin, and see if we can ask her and see if she can make this position. And when she makes this position, you take a picture, and then we send that picture to Raffaele Concilio anyway. And I said, Swamiji, how are we going to do that? How? So, well, we'll figure out. So one of the days we were out, and there were so many people in India, of course, so Swamiji was sitting in one corner. Why don't you ask that lady, that young lady, and just ask them to make that position and see if you can. And I said, Swamiji, just ask. So anyway, I went to that lady. So excuse me, do you see that gentleman there? He's my grandfather, and he's a writer, and he just finished a book, and he's looking blah blah. I explained her a little bit. Do you mind to do this position? And I can take a picture of you and show to him and see. Anyway, so she said, sure, I'll do that. So we did this several times, because Swamiji at the beginning, he didn't like the position of her hands. He said they were not inviting enough. Then we did for another lady. Swamiji didn't like her eyes, because he said they are not sweet enough. Then we did with another lady. He didn't like her smile, because he said it's not compassionate enough. So you could see that Swamiji was trying to make sure that if someone was going to channel Divine Mother, she had to have specific elements and a vibration and a consciousness and an expression that would match the image that Swamiji saw inwardly. So then Swamiji said, why don't you do it? He asked me. I said, well, Swamiji, yes, why don't you do it? Let's call Jyotish. Let's call Jyotish now. Maybe he can take a picture of you. So anyway, somehow I ended up being the model, because I knew exactly the position after asking thousands of girls doing that. So I knew exactly what Swamiji wanted anyway. So Jyotish took that picture, showed to Swamiji, and Swamiji liked it very much. This is exactly what I wanted. I was really, wow, okay. So anyway, he sent that picture to the artist. The artist worked on it, finished it, and then the painting arrived. Okay, so what I'm going to share right now is that moment, the first time that Swamiji is going to see that painting finished, and this is what happened. So this was in Assisi, in his living room. And Narya, I don't know if you know Narya from Ananda Assisi, so he brought that painting to Swamiji. So Narya entered with the painting, and this is it. When the painting arrived, it was already framed and huge. I felt so embarrassed. I kept thinking, who on earth is going to want to have this painting? I resisted even looking at it. Swamiji, as if reading my mind, interrupted my thoughts by exclaiming, "This is so beautiful. I love it. Let's hang it in the living room where everyone can see it." As Swamiji uttered those words, I stared at him to make sure he was joking, but he wasn't. I hinted that it was a bit too big for his living room and perhaps too imposing for others. I don't remember what other excuses I came up with, hoping to avoid that huge frame hanging in his home. I completely lost that battle, but instead, I learned a precious lesson. Swamiji always addressed art, specifically paintings, as friends. Friends you would like to invite into your home. A painting should inspire a feeling in the heart. It adds energy, color, vibration, and evokes a state of consciousness. A painting is something you want at home because of the feeling it brings to your environment, just as you would invite a friend to enjoy their company for hours. In wanting that painting to be in his living room, Swamiji implied, "You are my friend, and this painting reflects your highest self. I love seeing you in that light. I want to keep you in this way." This painting represents both a reminder of our friendship and a reminder of your highest potential. But instead of supporting Swamiji's outward expression of his true friendships towards me, my resistance to the painting was denying him that opportunity. Now, this painting holds a very special place in my heart, not for what it looks like as a piece of art, but for what it meant to Swamiji. There were so many ways in which Swamiji continuously expressed his love for everyone. Many of us only recognize it years later when we were spiritually mature enough to realize what he was truly giving us. Swami Kriyananda describes spiritual maturity as the ability to relate to other people's realities rather than our own. It is easier to relate to others' realities when we live in a higher one, but harder to relate to those whose realities are higher than our own. Swamiji always understood where we were, whereas for us, it was only much later that we could understand the reality in which he lived, a reality of perfected love, perfected friendship, perfected joy.
Beautiful.
Could you take this moment and talk about yourself and how you started and ended up?
So I wrote an entire book about it.
And we're out of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And please read it because I explain in detail what it was for me to enter into Swamiji's world the first time I met him, the way in which he changed my life, the things I witnessed with him, and what it was to live with a modern saint, what it meant to work with your ego in daily life. And then if you have any questions, I would be very happy to sit with you and ask any questions.
What's the title?
This is My Heart Remembers Swami Kriyananda.
Let's just close with this prayer that Master often closed. Divine Mother, may thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion. May we be able to awaken thy love in all hearts. Om. Peace. Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Truly marvelous evening.
So fun.
Yeah.